Are you ready for scenes like this? We're about to hit the heart of snow and cold of the winter in Indiana. Hello, I'm Chief Meteorologist Ashley Brown. And here at Wish TV, I can tell you that the entire full Storm Track 8 team, we're ready for winter. So over the next 30 minutes, we want to help and make sure you and your children are ready for winter. Let's start with the most common question we get this time of year. Of course, it's about snow. Just how much do you think? And meteorologist Ryan Morse is here to help us figure that out.
Yeah, well, it has been 3 straight winters of seeing a La Nina. We changed to El Nino as we head into this winter forecast. So what does that mean, and how is that going to affect the winter forecast here in central Indiana? The official start of winter is only a short time away. Year after year, we get to this point of the fall and wonder what this upcoming winter has in store for us. Some of us hope for a winter filled of snowstorms. Others dread it. A huge factor in what can make or break a winter outlook lies thousands of miles away. That would be El Nino or La Nina.
Well, what we're talking about when we mention La Nina and El Nino, they're different phases of the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And basically what that means is it's identifying what the water temperatures in the equatorial Pacific are doing.
In a La Nina phase, the water temperatures are below normal off of the western South American coastline. And in El Nino phase, the water temperatures are above normal in these same locations. Those water temperatures have an impact on the jet stream downwind into North America. Right now, a strong El Nino is in place and expected to last most of the winter. Usually this leads to the polar jet stream remaining separate from the subtropical jet stream during the winter months. This results in deeper moisture in the southern U.S., but for us in central Indiana during an El Nino,
the strongest signal we see when we are in an El Nino, and particularly a stronger El Nino, is we tend to be drier than normal. And then we tend to stay a little warmer than normal because that colder air isn't coming down quite as frequently because the polar jet stream is remaining to our north.
Previous years that had a similar El Nino pattern provide great value on what we can potentially expect for this upcoming winter.
We had a stronger one back just 7-8 years ago, 2015-16, which would be one we look at. And then really the 2 years that a lot of folks look at is 82, 83, and 1997 and 98. Those were stronger El Ninos.
You heard Mike Ryan talk about similar past winters where we've had a strong El Nino in place. Well, here are those 3 winters and how they performed: 2015 and 2016, 1997, 1998, and 1982, 1983. Now, on average through the winter, we see over 21 inches of snow. Of course, through the year, it's over 25 inches, but all 3 of these winters had below average snowfall, 2 of the 3 below average precipitation, and all 3 saw temperatures above average. So let's talk about the winter outlook this year. Well, the winter outlook issued by NOAA, this is for the entire United States, very strong El Nino consideration here with that polar jet locked to our north. Most of the northern part of the United States favoring above average temperatures, including us in central Indiana. And that also applies with precipitation. NOAA also taking into consideration the strong El Nino we're likely going to have in place, deeper moisture likely locked in the southern United States, and I mentioned that drier than normal signal likely for us in Indiana. El Nino gives us an idea of how a winter can play out on a larger scale. But remember, that only gives us a broad idea of what can happen. There are other factors such as moisture from the Gulf, smaller scale jet stream pattern changes, and localized snow bands that can alter totals significantly on a smaller scale for the season. I'm meteorologist Ryan Morse for Wish TV, wishtv.com, and like us on Facebook.
Winter officially arrives in a little more than 30 days. If you're looking for tips and tricks to help you save time and money this winter, the internet is full of them. Let's go through a few tips to see if this can help you this winter or if it's even worth your time. All right, let's start with some of these tips with tip number 1. Do you think this is true, false, or not worth your time? Now, you've probably seen it on the internet or heard someone say it. Is it true that if you spray non-stick cooking spray on a shovel, snow will fall off, making it easier to shovel snow? Is this true, false, or not worth your time? Or this one is true. Spraying non-stick cooking spray on a shovel actually allows the shovel to be lubricated, making it easy for snow to just fall off, which means it could save you time. Instead of banging that shovel on the ground to get the snow off, you can just keep going, making your process just a little bit quicker. Tip number 2. Now this one seems like a great idea. Looking at this, foil behind a heater is the question. You can put foil behind a radiator or space heater to help reflect heat, therefore heating the room a little bit faster. Is this true, false, or not worth your time? Well, I believe that this is one that's not worth it. Although it is true, foil will reflect heat, but there could be some dangers in it. To talk about that dangers, we head out to the Indianapolis International Airport to talk to Chief Fred Purvine.
When you modify things, sometimes you can create problems. So we don't suggest, I know that it's a practice that's been done before, but we don't suggest modifying any equipment. And manufacturers also, if you read manufacturers' things, they'll also state that it's not wise to do any alternating any or modifying any of their equipment.
The next one, let's talk about this tip, heat from an oven. After cooking, you should leave your oven door open so that heat isn't wasted. Now, I'll tell you, I've been guilty of this one. But do you think it's true, false, or not worth your time? Well, this one, I would say not worth it. Once again, we'll head out to the Indianapolis International Airport to Fire Chief Fred Purvine.
It's not safe. Number one, the oven was not designed to do that. And then also those byproducts of that gas is burning, carbon monoxide, it creates problems, and it can make you sick. And it can also, if it gets real high, it could kill you. So you should never use your gas burners or your oven to warm your house.
Another tip, probably common, this one, is worth it to spin your fan clockwise on low in the winter. True, false, or not worth your time? This one is true. So if you have the heat on and outside, of course, it's cold, the clockwise motion of the fan will actually push heat down to the ground, helping you to warm that room just a little bit faster. So that one definitely works. Another tip, leave your blinds or shades open on a sunny winter day. Do you think that's helpful? True, false, not worth your time? Well, this one is true. So the sun has energy, right? That sun's energy is warm, and with that warm energy radiating through the window, of course, it warms you a little faster. So that one is definitely true. Next tip, if you park your car facing east during the winter months, it is helpful. True, false, not worth your time? This one is true. Easier to melt snow with that sun sitting to the east, so yes, parking your car facing east is quite helpful on very cold days when you have ice, snowy days, of course, as well. Final tip. Kitty litter can help you if you get stuck in the snow. Is this true, false, or not worth your time? This one is true. Kitty litter behind a wheel will actually give you enough traction to actually move or get out of a space if you're stuck in snow. So that one is true and definitely worth your time. This winter, make sure you have a little kitty litter in the trunk if you're traveling out on a snowy day. Time for a little weather trivia. What's Indianapolis' coldest wind chill ever recorded? Do you think it's A, 52 below, B, 27 below, or C, 43 below? We'll have the answer after the break.
Welcome back. Let's hit up on the trivia question here. What is Indianapolis's coldest wind chill ever recorded? The answer, 52.6 below. That was set back in January 20th, 1985. Let's hope we don't get anything like that this winter. I'm meteorologist Marcus Bailey. Good to be with you here. I tell you, the winter gives us a whole host of interesting precipitation types, right? From rain to sleet to ice to snow. And I want to focus on how sometimes difficult that can be to forecast. So we're going to look at this in AR in 3 dimensions and how we kind of look at this. Rain is a pretty easy forecast. What you're looking at is obviously the ground and then the cloud and the column of air in between. Everything is above freezing, basically, from cloud to ground, which would then promote liquid or rain precipitation. Usually a pretty easy forecast. It's very much temperature dependent. Where it gets a little tricky is when you're talking ice and sleet. I want to start with freezing rain, which, by the way, is quite rare, and there's a good reason for that. You kind of have the same setup as you would for rain, okay? It is warm in a large chunk of this column of air from cloud to almost the ground. What makes this a freezing rain event is when the surface itself is below freezing. So everything is falling as rain, but it freezes on contact, on the pavement, on the power lines, on the trees and the tree limbs. And that's what can be so dangerous about this, because you can't really tell when it's falling. It is like a cold rain, but then freezes on contact. Sleet is a little bit different, and it's just a gradual change. You saw the very warm column of air from cloud, but it doesn't go all the way down to the surface. It actually gets below freezing just below the surface, and that allows for that water droplet to freeze just before contact, and that's when you get those little sleet pellets there, which is far less dangerous than freezing rain. You don't want that glaze of ice. Sleet can cause its own problems, sure, but freezing rain, really one of the worst kind of conditions, especially when it comes to the winter, for driving specifically. Snow is a lot like rain in that the whole column of air stays cold, below freezing, from cloud all the way to ground, and that then allows for frozen precipitation in the form of snow. All right? So think about this when you're out driving, all right? We always stress, both in the news business and the weather world, of making sure you've got enough distance to stop. Here's why. When it's dry, it doesn't take you very long to stop. And even in wet conditions, you're maybe tacking on a couple of seconds. Obviously, if it's heavy rain, you have that risk of hydroplaning, so you do want to have a little bit more separation. Snow obviously can be a little bit more problematic, where you have much longer stopping distance time, but where it gets much more tricky is when you're dealing with ice, because you don't have that traction. Even with snow, with a frozen precipitation type, it can be easier to stop than it would be with a glaze of ice. So always make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of distance. So just kind of a quick look of some of the precip types we have. All right, coming up, let's get to the weather trivia question here. What is the least snowiest winter on record dating back to 1943? Is it 2022-23, 81-82, or 72-73? We'll have the answer right after this.
All right, welcome back. For those who decided on the answer C, you picked correctly. There was only 2.9 inches of snow that fell all together that winter in 1972-73. Now, winter usually brings with it snow and cold, but also many family traditions around the holidays. One tradition is venturing out, cutting down the perfect tree. But before the tree makes its way into your home, it takes almost a decade to grow, battling the elements and needing lots of care. I went to one farm in Crawfordsville and found out it's a true labor of love. The Steins are grain farmers at heart. Rachel brought up the idea to husband Matt about expanding the family farm to something a little more festive. Christmas trees.
One of the things we're trying to do here is to create traditions and memories for families.
It's a childhood activity Rachel remembers and wants to pass along to her kids. But trying to grow and nurture acres of trees takes time.
I think the most important thing to starting a Christmas tree farm is a little bit of ignorance, because it does take so long, so much patience.
Long as in a decade. From seedlings to maturity, it takes roughly about 11 years until the trees are ready to be cut down. Matt is constantly watching the weather forecast because these trees thrive in slightly drier than average conditions and cooler temperatures.
There's been 2 years that we've been pretty dry, particularly this year with the seedlings that we were trying to get established. We've had 2 years that the mortality percentage has been a little higher just due to being dry. This year we got some irrigation.
Irrigation has helped, and the mature trees have done very well and will be ready to cut this year. Next weather worry to watch is the spring temperatures.
A really late freeze hurts these little buds that you can barely see right now. That next year, this is the branch for next year, and it'll pop out in early spring. And if we get a hard freeze in early May, that can get kind of scary.
Not only do they face impacts from the weather here, but also from wildlife. Take a look at this. You could see deer have damaged this particular tree by rubbing its antlers on it, but this tree is still useful. They're going to use this for garland and other kind of wreaths, so it's not a completely lost cause. The Steins have 12,000 trees and are all in various stages of development. Each one gets special attention several times a year. The shape we're so used to seeing isn't natural. Each one is individually trimmed to look like a cone.
So you got to come in and prune the tops to keep that conical shape. And you want it to be nice and full the whole way down, and you don't want it super thick or super thin, and that's all part of the art.
An art that is also a labor of love. By the time a tree reaches your house, the countless hours spent caring for it won't even be noticeable.
There are some challenges like we talked about with the weather, but there are a plethora of trees available for you to cut.
Rows upon rows of trees are looked over carefully, trimmed, and given extra attention so you can make those family memories. All right, let's take a look at our weather trivia question. How much snow did we receive last winter, December to February? Is it A, 4.5 inches, B, 5.7, or C, 9.6? We'll reveal the answer when we come back.
Welcome back. If you picked B during the break, guess what? You are correct. We received 5.7 inches of snow last winter. And speaking of winter, with the changing of the seasons, people always throw around advice and tips for making it through the winter. However, many of these times these facts are misleading or just outright wrong. Ashley already explored a few tips in and around the house. Let's go explore some outdoor winter folklore. Everybody loves a good myth, and it's always fun to hear if a winter myth is, true or if it's just make-believe. So I thought we'd talk about a few of those as we move into the winter season ahead. The first of which I always hear is the idea that elderly and children are more likely to get cold compared to the average U.S. adult. Is this true or is this fiction? It's definitely true. Both of those, old and young folk, have a lot less fat reserve than most average adult males and females. As well, they also have a little bit thinner of skin, which lets that heat penetrate even faster, and kids have almost no muscle. Same thing with adults. So with all those factors at play, they do indeed feel the cold, get affected by the cold, and get even their body temperatures cools down faster than the average adult. That one is true, but let's talk about a few others. All right, time for another myth out there. Is it the idea that a nice cup of hot coffee, if you're gonna go, do something like sledding, or if you're gonna go out, shovel a bunch of snow, something active and outdoors, you'd think caffeine and warmth, that'd be the perfect combination? That's actually not true. The reason for it, caffeine is a diuretic, meaning that you lose a lot of fluids. You have to go to the bathroom more often, and a dehydrated body is a body that's a lot more susceptible to cold and cold-related injuries compared to one that is perfectly hydrated. That's another reason why, in fact, alcohol or adult beverages also not a good idea. May make you feel warm if you've taken a couple of drinks earlier in the evening and you go outside for a crisp evening walk. However, just because you feel warm, your body actually is going to become dehydrated. Again, alcohol is a diuretic, and thus, if you're dehydrated, you may feel warm, but your body actually might be dangerously deceiving you into thinking you're all right when your body is in fact not doing great. And we've saved the best for last. This might be one of the most shocking of them all because it's so widely accepted as true. It's the idea that about 80-85% of the heat in your body escapes through your head, which is why you need a nice warm hat when you're going to be spending a lot of time outdoors. And while that part is true, you definitely want a hat outside. The thing that's false is actually that not about 80%, not 70, only about 10% of the heat in your body can escape through your head. It's about the same as any other body part. It's a little bit difficult to figure out exactly where this 80% idea came from. To the best of my research, I think the thing that really started to spread the idea was back in the earlier years. We're talking 1950s or so. The Army conducted research to see where the heat escaped off of soldiers the most, and in those experiments, well, guess what the Army folks and the people doing the experiment didn't have on? A hat. So of course 80% of the heat's going to escape through their head if everything else is nice and warm, but their head is exposed. But if you had, clothes on everywhere, you'd find that the heat is slowly escaping from every body part equally. So there you have it, a couple of fun and helpful tips to keep you and your family safe in the upcoming winter.
And thanks for watching our winter weather special. We're ready for snow. How many inches?
10 to 15.
10 to 15.
I'm not calling for amounts, but I'm calling for thunder snow.
Oh, I like it. I like it
It's
a
been
lot.
a while since we've had that. I got to lean toward, I don't know if I have a number, but below average, because that's
Definitely.
been the trend. But you know what? It's always active. We've got you covered here at Storm Track 8. Thanks for watching.